Okay. So, Arpit, if you like to share your screen and then start with the session.
Sure. So let me share my screen first. Is it visible? Okay, great. So as we have already told you, this session is about persisting data in your local database. How can you create your own local database and persist some information which will live even after your app is closed? Okay, so we'll be using a library called Room library provided by Google. That library will help us in saving our data even when the app closes. So let's start building the app. Let me close it for now. Let's just delete it. Now this is an empty project that I've created. Like if you have followed the previous session, you must know like how to create a basic project. It's just an empty project, nothing else. And from here we will start building the app. Okay, so this is gone. Now the first step is to get the dependencies. This is the Gradle file. We will add dependencies. So I have all the dependencies with me. Let me just paste them out straight. These are the dependencies that we'll be using now. Let just to go through them one by ones. So this is the room library. These are 3 dependencies that we'll be using for like saving the data for the room library. This is the room runtime library, and then there's a care plugin, which is a room compiler, and then the room KTX for Kotlin. So these are the libraries that we'll be using, the 3 dependencies for the room library. And for that, you'll also have to add this plugin, that Kotlin cat plugin, because room generates some code for us, and in order for room to be able to do that, we need to add this extra plugin here. And then we have this old dependency that we have used earlier also. First one is the view model dependency that we used to put our data into, and then this one more activity gateway dependency. You guys must be familiar of these dependencies from the previous sessions. And one more thing that comes here is these build features, because we'll be using view binding in this session. Just enable this view binding, put these dependencies, and add this one cat plugin. So that's it that you need to do, and just click on sync now so that it downloads all the required libraries from the internet. It should take only a few moments. So it's the dependencies, and it's done. So we have all the dependencies, and now let's start building the app. So the first step will be to define the model that we'll be using for saving the database. So are you guys familiar with the SQL language? You're not audible to me. Okay, so is like, am I not audible to everyone else, or is someone able to hear me? Is my voice not clear? Okay, it's clear. Maybe something wrong on your side, Diksha. Please check. Maybe your internet connection is weak, or maybe something. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, so I was asking, like, how many of you have heard about SQL? Like, has anyone heard about SQL, this language? Yes. Okay. Only name. So okay. So SQL stands for structured query language. So one way of storing the data is in a relational database. So what is a relational database? In this form, you have a table where each column represents one property of the entity that you are going to save. For example, if you're going to save users in a table, the columns will be like username, user email, user ID, then address, maybe phone number. These data will be put in the columns, and then each row will represent one user. So like one row for one user. And this is what room expects is we need to provide one data class that will be used as an entity for that table. So room actually uses a SQL database inside. So let's create a package. Let's name it data. and this is where we'll put all the data files. The first step is to create a model that we want to save in the database. That's called to. This will be a data class. And what do we want to store the to do? So if you're seeing the app, like for now, it's just basic strings. So we only need to store some string data here. Let's create a variable called data. This will just be a simple string that we need to store. Now for storing this in the table, each row has to have some unique identifier. In SQL, we call it a primary key. So every row must have something unique from which it can be identified. Now data can repeat because we might have multiple items in our recycler view with same string. So we need to provide a new variable, and which will be served as the ID. Let's make it int for now. Now this variable will be used, not int range. This ID will be unique for all the to-dos. Now this is the data class that we'll be using. It will have a one ID and a data string. So this is what we'll see in the UI, and this is what room will use internally to differentiate between different rows. Now, right now, this is just a normal Kotlin class. For room to be able to generate some code from it, we need to annotate it with entity. So this annotation that we get from the dependency that we have used. This is the Android x.room.entity. It's an annotation that will tell room that we need to create a table for this model. And for that table, we'll use this ID as our primary key, which is a unique identifier. So we need to annotate it with primary key. Now, because we don't want to like provide the unique ID by ourselves, we can ask room to generate a new unique ID for every entity that we have. For some cases, like we might want for us to provide the ID. For example, if you have a, let's say, a database for students of IIT for that unique ID can be the roll number. So like we will want to provide the roll number by ourselves. So in that case, we don't want room to generate it by itself. But in this case, we don't have anything special about the ID. We won't be using it for any purpose. So let's allow room to generate it. For that, we will have to write auto generate is equals to true. Now what will happen is that room will automatically generate this ID. And for now, let's just provide the default value that is 0. This won't be used because room will automatically generate IDs for us. So that's not going to be used, but just to provide a default value, we have used 0 here. So this is the entity that will be saved in the database. So we will have a table. That table will be named to do. It will have two columns. One will be integer type column for storing the ID, and another will be the data column for storing the actual data that we want to save in the database. This is Arjun is no. Okay, Arjun is no. Okay. Arjun, can you, like, if there's something, just please speak up. Like, so I might not be reading chats all the time. You can speak up and tell me if there's something I need to explain more. This was about the to-do part. The next step is we need to define those functions that we need to perform for the database operations. So for that, we need to create a new Kotlin class. Let's call it to-do DAO. It will be an interface for DAO. So DAO means data access objects. So this is what we'll be using to tell room like what are the different database operations that we need to perform in our database. So there's again a special annotation for it. We need to annotate with DAO for room to know that this is the interface that we'll be using to perform the operations. Since this is an interface, room will provide us the implementation of this interface by itself. We do not write any code except database. We just need to mention what is all the stuff that we need to do. Can you guess what are different stuff that we need to do here? Like we have a database where we need to save data. So like what can be the possible might do the database? What can you think of it? The database for? And operations that we need to perform the database. let me tell. Two basic operations that we'll be using in this particular app. The first one will be saving data, and the second one is retrieving data. So we need to provide two functions here. The first one will be used for saving the data, and the second one will be used for retrieving data that is saved already in the database. So the first function will be save to do. So this function will take a to do as input, save database. Now to tell room that we want to use this for the insertion operator, we only need to annotate it with insert. That this is an insertion operator, so it will take this value and store it in the database. This function takes some time, so access, like doing database operations. If you remember, we'll be using a suspend keyword to tell room to generate some code for us, so that this function completes only when the data is properly saved in the database. This function will help us do that. Kotlin coroutine. This was about the saving to do. The next thing is fetch all to dos. So it will like get to dos. This is a new function that we'll be using. We normally expect to return a list of to do. Now we need to tell room that how to execute this function. So for here we need to write an SQL query, a simple SQL query that will tell room to fetch all the data from the data, this particular table. So the query looks something like this. It's a normal SQL syntax. Select star from to do. So that's that in right. So star means we need to select all the columns. So select all the columns from this table and provide it to me. Now, if we just write it like this, so it is something known as a one-shot operation. So you call this function, you'll get a list of to do. But then when you update the database with new data, this function will not be called again, and you won't get the new data automatically. So you have to again call this function and get this data. Now this becomes tough when you are modifying data from multiple places. So it becomes hard to manage. So one solution to that is you can use something called as a live data. So we have introduced you with live data in earlier sessions. So I hope probably you remember that. Live data is nothing but a observable data holder. This is a data holder whose value we can observe. The room will automatically write code to provide us this live data. Now these are the two functions that we need to write. First one for saving data in the database, and second one for getting a list of all the data that we have saved yet till now in the database. So any questions still here? Okay, I assume there's none. This was step 2. We need to provide a to-do DAO. And like you can also go to the Loom documentation. So if you go Android, you can get the documentation. So in future, if you need any help, like what was proper syntax or how to do more stuff in it, you can go through this documentation, and it like very well describes all the operations that you need to do. This is the structure that we are using. So this one was the entities. So this is what we created, the to-do entity. This is used to set field values. So whenever you need to get or update data, this entity. The second step that we did was creating this data access. What is it does is get entities from DB and persist changes back to database. So we can fetch data from the database and we can save it in the database. So this is what we use for DAO for. And so the next step will be to create the room database. Now, okay, just give me a second. I'm getting a call here. Okay, sorry for the interruption, guys. Like I was told, my voice is not audible. So I hope it is audible now, right? Like once more, can you confirm like if I'm audible properly? Okay, great. So let's continue with that. So I was showing this documentation. So we have created these entities and the data access objects. The next step is to create the room data itself, the room database. So the function of this room database is to get these DAOs. So how we do that is we create a new file, again a Kotlin class. Let's name it room database. Now this is the class that will be used as a database. So it needs to extend this class provided by room, which is known as going to extend, and we need to add an annotation here. Tell room that this is our this, and this annotation expects us to provide these parameters. The first parameter you can see is the entities. What are the entities that we need to save in this database? We have only one entity that's called the to do. So the to do class that we have. Okay, what's next? Next is ask us for the version. So this is the version of the database that we'll be using. Right now, since we are creating this database for the first time, we're using version 1. In future, if we need to update our database, we need to add some more entities, or we need to change the structure of our database. So we'll have to increment this version every time. Like for now, we can just keep it to be 1. And since room will provide the implementation for this class, we can mark it as abstract, because we don't want to write the code for us, and we'll allow room to write the code for creating the database and maintaining it. Now from this database, what we want is to get this DAO. So let's create another abstract function. So abstract means that we are not providing the implementation of this particular class or functions, and we are letting someone else to implement it. So we need to create a function called get DAO, and this will return the to DAO. Now we don't need to mention how are we going to do that, because this is what room will do for us. We just need to mention that we need a function that will give us this DAO. So room will automatically write the entire code that it needs to create the object. Now, one thing that's remains is how to create this database. So let's create a function. So we'll be using a companion object here. So in case you're familiar with Java, it's like static. So we can access all the stuff inside companion object without actually creating an instance of to-do database. So we can just use this class name to access all the parameters that are inside companion object. So inside it, we need a function get database. Now, in case we need a database in multiple screens, we don't want to create our database again and again. We want to create it once and use that created object in all the different places. So if this function is called multiple, we need to only create database once and just cache it. So to cache the database, what we can do is we can create a private variable, and let's call it instance. So this will represent our database instance, and the type of it will be to do database, and let's provide a null value to it. So when the program starts, this variable will have a null value, and inside this we want to return our to do database. Now we'll return the instance, but it shows an error right now. It says we want our to do database, but what we're returning is a nullable database. So in case it's null, which it definitely will be at the beginning, we need to provide this database. So this is the Elvis operator. It's a Kotlin feature. Whenever this value is null, this code will be executed. So if instance is not null, return this. If it's null, create database here. So the way we create database is we write room dot import room database builder. Here we need to pass 3 parameters. First one is the context. Second is the class, our database class that we need to create. And third is the database name that we need to provide. Now context, let's accept in the parameter itself. So we'll be using application context here, and we'll provide this in the while we are calling this get database function. So the first parameter is the app. The second is the exact database that we need to create. We need to create this to-do database. So let's tell it that we want to create this database, class.java, and then our database name. So we can choose whatever name we like. Let's say to-do db. You can put whatever name you like here, and then you call build. So it will build a database. Just to recap, when we call this function, we provide an application context to it, and if this instance is nullable, which it will be when we call this function for the first time. For the first time, this will be nullable, and it will run this code. Now this code will create a database, and we want to just save it in the instance. There's another way to do this is we can check if instance is equals to null. In case the instance was null initially, we can update our instance with this value. So now we are updated, and now we know that this is no more nullable. So for the first time when we call this function, it will go inside the if condition. This will evaluate to true. So it will create this instance of database, and it will assign it to this variable, and then we'll be returning that variable. So this is the code that we need to write to get our database. Now these three were the main steps to implement database, and next onwards we'll be only calling these functions to save and retrieve data. So any doubts till here, like how have we created these three classes? In case anyone has any question. Okay. What is app application here? So this application is the topmost object. Like it represents the entire application of your app. So this is the class which you can think of it's created before even the activity is created. So we have this activity that is opened when the first create an app. This application class is what is even before that. So when we just click on that icon, this class is created, and this contains the top level functionalities for our application. Now we only need a context here. So one possibility was we could have passed an activity context, because we can also get a context from an activity. But the reason we are in application is because activity context can change over time. For example, when we rotate our phone or change the theme or switch to a different activity, the previous activity is destroyed. So the context changes. We don't want to pass a context that changes over time. So app is actually a variable name that we are using to represent this app. You can just rename it to application or anything. You can call it application as well. It's just a variable name, and this is the type of variable. So like we have all these different types called room database, to DAO database. The application is another type that is provided by Android only, and we are passing this here to use in the database builder. How to get this data, we'll show you next when we call this function. Okay, Arjun's here. So I think it will be more clear when we actually call this function. So let's go ahead and write the next code. So the next step is creating the UI for it. But since we'll be using the same UI that we had created earlier in session 2, I will just use the same UI here. This was the UI. Let me just briefly go through it. And we need one more layout here. Like first for the activity one, and the layout for the item in our recycler view. So to do list item. So this is the list item that we are going to use. It's a simple text view that we are using in session 2. So like a small margin, and we have a background color, a teal color in the background, a padding. This is spacing. It's called the padding. and we have the text color as black, text size as 18 sp, and it's a sample text run to do to see how it looks like. This is a simple text view, and then in the activity we have this code, the same that we are using session 2. So if we have this edit text that will be used to type in our to do. So pretty straightforward stuff here. Some margins to maintain some distance from the borders. You can ignore this for now. And this is the hint that we use, the placeholder text. The input type is text here. We don't want any number or something email type. It will be just plain text. Next we have a button. So the save button that we have a margin end of 16 dp, so that it's 16 dp away from the border. And actually, if I remember, like Gaurav asked in the beginning, it how to like show the name in small case. So if you see right now, so save I've written S in capital and the next 3 in small letters. But in the UI, what I get is all 4 are capitalized. So this is the default behavior of a button. Like it uses uppercase for the text. If you need to disable it, you can add this another attribute here, which is text all caps, and set it to false. So what it will do is that we do not want all letters capitalized. So set it to false, and now whatever you write here, the text, the same will appear here. So now if I make S small, or this S also is small, so the exact same thing will be used here. So if you do not want everything capitalized, you can add this attribute and it will fix it. I'm removing it for now. And then we have the recycler view, which uses a linear layout manager because we want to arrange the different items linearly. And we want to use to-do list item here just to show the items that we have. Pretty standard stuff here, nothing complex. So this was the UI that we are going to use. And since we have a recycler view, we need to create an adapter as well to fill in the recycler view. So let's create an adapter for the recycler view. Let's call it to-do adapter. And this will again be almost the same stuff that we had created earlier. Let me paste it as well, just to go through it. So it's a class that we use for the adapter. It extends recycler view.adapter, and we pass a view holder to it. Like view holder is the, you can think of it as a holder for that view. So it's the holder that will contain this view. So this view holder accepts a binding because we are using view binding, and this to-do list item binding. So we have this to-do list item here, and corresponding to that XML, we have a binding class here. We put the binding class, and then it extends the recycler view.view holder, and we pass in the root layout here, root view. Then the list of to-dos that we maintain, because this is the list that we need to display to the UI. So it's a where because we need to change it over time. So as data in our database changes, this list will be updated. This is one helper function that we have. Submit a new list to this function and will update its internal list to that new list, and then it will call this function called notify dataset changed, which will update our UI as well. Because if we do not write this and we just write this, our UI will not be updated, because we want our recycler view items to update when we provide a new list. We need to call this function called notify dataset changed. And then these are the standard functions that we override while creating an adapter. The first one is the onCreate view holder. So this function task is to create instances of this view holder that recycler will use. This is the code that we use. We get a layout inflator, and then we use that layout inflator to inflate our binding, and then we return a view holder. Next we have on bind view holder. So here what we do is we provide data to our view holder. So in our view holder, we update this to do text. So this to do represents this text view. So we need to update the text view of this text with the data in that to do. So to do's position, this will give the to do at that particular index named position. So once we have that to do here, we can access the data inside it. So this data refers to this string. So we get the to do from the database, and then from that we need to display this data in our text view. This is what we'll do in on bind view holder, and then this function returns the item size for the to-dos list, which represents how many items we need to display in the recycler view. This is almost the same adapter that we get in session 2. So I hope you guys remember. If you don't, you can just go through it again, session 2. In case anyone has any doubt, maybe I can take it here. If anyone else wants to ask something till what we have covered? Okay, nothing. So we are almost done. We have implemented our database code. We have our UI ready. The only thing remaining is to connect these two, connect our database with the UI. So now we always create a view holder to hold all our data related operations. So let's create a new class for to do view model. Sorry, that is a view holder. I meant view model. This is a new class called to do view model. It will extend this class that we have been doing sessions as well. So this is the class where we'll put all our data stuff. And now we need to get this here. So create a variable called private val view model by view models and import it. And we need to get a to do view model. So this is how we can get our view model instance. And here we'll use binding, activity main binding. So getting an object of here. So activity main binding and inflate it using the layout inflator. And here we need to pass the binding.to. So we have our binding set. What we need to do, what we want is that whenever we click on this button, save, so whatever text we have written here, that should get saved in our database. So we need to listen for this button click. So let's say binding dot button save dot set on click listener. Whenever you click on this button, this function will get called. And here we need to get the data, or you can also call it to do, from the edit text. So binding dot to do input dot text convert it to string. We can add one check here that if the data is not empty, if it is not empty, so in case it empty, user hasn't typed anything and just click on the save button, we don't want to do anything. But if it is not empty, we want to save it. Now to save it, we will use view model dot save to do and passing this data there. But since we haven't created this function here, we get this red error here. So let's create this function. Fun. Save to. So this is the data that we want to save. Now to save the data, we need our DAO here, because we need to call this function save to do. So we need to get an instance of this DAO. Now to get this DAO, we need this database, because from this database we can call this function called get DAO and it will give us the DAO. Now to create this database, we need to call this function, which is get database. So this function will give us the database. And now to call this function, we need an application instance. So this is our next task. How can we get an application inside the view model? So like this view model does not have a direct access to application. What we can do is we can actually get application here and pass it to the view model. So to pass data to the view model, what we can do is we can create a function called init and provide it with the application instance. This view model will use this application instance to create a database. So it will use to do database dot get database and app. This will get us the database. And if we write get DAO, it will give us the DAO. So we need to define this DAO globally here so that we can use it across functions. So let's call it private late init var to do DAO and to do DAO, and we can initialize it here. We have a DAO here. Now we can use this DAO to save our database. To do DAO dot save to do, and we can create a to do object here, passing in the data that we want. Okay, now there's one error here. It says suspend function should only be called from a coroutine. So if you remember our previous session on coroutines, it explains this thing here that we need something called as a view model scope, or we can say a coroutine scope to call suspend functions. So inside a view model, we can get a coroutine scope using this view model scope. This represents a coroutine scope, and with this scope, we can launch a coroutine and call this function save to do inside that coroutine. Now the error is gone. Okay, but we need to call this function init here to initialize it. So before doing any other operation, let's first call this view model dot init here, and here we can actually access application. So this is the application that we need. So activity has access to the application, view model does not. What we did was we created a function and we sent this application instance from the activity to this view model. And we need to do this before doing any other operation like save or get, so that we have the application in our view model. Okay, now so this will save our to do. Next step is to get all to dos from the database. So we need to get all the different to dos that we have from the database. So let's create another variable called to do list, and it will be a live data because our database systems are live data. So it will be a live data of list of to do. So the exact same thing that we had mentioned here. So the database is returning us a live data of list of to do that will store here. And let's initialize it here. To do list live data is equals to our to do DAO dot get all to dos. So this get all to dos is this function that we had created earlier. It will return the live data of to do objects. So we are pretty much done here. The only thing required is to use this live data to update our recycler view. So first we need to create an adapter for recycler view. So adapter, and we'll be using to do adapter here. Let's tell the recycler view that we want to use this adapter for the recycler view. So set it in the recycler view. And then we want to observe changes to that list that we get from the database. So let me remove the private here because we want to access it in the main activity. So to do list live data dot observe, and here we get the list. So you can see this, it represents list of to do. And what we want is we want to update our adapter by submitting this new list. So we get the list and we submit it to the adapter, and the adapter will change our UI. So this was it for this app. Let's run it again and see if it works. That will take some time to build. In case you have any questions regarding what we did so far, you can put them in the chat. Let's wait for the build to finish. Okay, the build is finished. Okay, now let's try to add some data, and hopefully it should work this time. So we have this hello world here. Let's type something else. So it's a to do. Let's type something sensible like buy clothes. So it's done. Now this is what it looked like in session 2 as well. So we are typing stuff here and it is getting added to the recycler view. Now the interesting part comes when we close this app. So we close it, we remove it, and then let's open it again. So you can see the data was saved, and now we start with the same data that we had left with. Let's add some more stuff here. It is added to the list. You close the app, and whenever next time you open this app, you will see the exact same state that you left with. So all this here. So now just to summarize all the stuff here, so we have this main activity. Inside the main activity, we have this layout, this edit text, this button, and the recycler view. So recycler view is this item layout called to-do list item, which represents this individual item. Now the first thing that we did was to provide this application context to our view model. That view model can initialize this to-do DAO. So now once it is initialized, we can use it to call other functions. Now the next thing that we did was we added a click listener to this save button, so that whenever we click on this button, it calls this function called save to do in the view model. Now what this function does is it calls the save to do function of the view model, of the DAO, and it passes a to do object inside the DAO. So we have a new to do object with a data inside it that we passed, and this function we defined here. So the best part is we do not need to do any operations by ourselves. We do not need to do any queries or something. We just need to tell Room that we need a function that will can use to save data, and Room will write all the required code for itself. And just to give an idea of what it looks like, so this is what Room has written. So you do not need to understand it, but this is the class that it has created by itself. It has created this new class called to-do-DAO_implementation, which actually implements our DAO. So this is all the code that Room wrote to allow us to do those operations. We do not need to know what it does. We don't care for that, but somehow magically it writes all the codes, and we just need to define those functions. So this is the insert function, and the next one was to get all to dos. So we just need to write a simple SQL query here, which means select all columns from this table, and return it in the form of a live data of list of to-do objects. So we can save the to-do here, and it will be saved, and we are getting the list of all items, and the live data is initialized here. So we use this live data, and it will keep being updated to contain the new value. And here we are observing that live data. So if we are not using this live data, if we were just returning a simple list of to do here, so the app would have compiled and run. But the only problem with it was that whenever we call this save to do, every time we'll have to call this get all to dos to get the updated lists. Right now we do not need to do that. We just save it, and whenever something changes in the database, we are automatically notified of it. So since we are using live data, the room automatically notifies us about any changes in our table. So that's a pretty good advantage of live data. It removes a lot of boilerplate code for us. And then we submit this list to the Raptor. This was the submit list function. It updates our internal list and then updates the UI. So this was it, basically it for the saving part. I guess we don't have any more code here. So this is the get database function where we pass an application context and it returns a to-do database. We are creating a variable called instance here so that we do not end up creating multiple copies of this database. So we only want one copy, and that copy should be used everywhere in the app. So the first time this function is called, our instance will be null, and here we'll initialize it, and every time onwards this condition will evaluate to false, and we will return this instance directly. This was the entire app. So in case anyone has doubt or wants to know some extra feature about it, like how can we add this functionality, maybe I can also show that here if anyone is curious of a particular functionality, that how can we implement this thing also in the code. Also, if you have read the app submission guidelines that I shared a PDF for the ASJ, it was a point there that you need to use room at least somewhere in the entire app. So in case any one of you is making an app for submission in ASJ, you need to use this room library somewhere in your app. Like you can use it for a very small purpose, like a very small data that you are saving, but you need to use it some. And it's pretty small code. You just need these two main classes. This to do you will automatically be using. Just add these two annotations here, and then just create this DAO function interface. Provide all the function that you want room to provide, and then this normal database code. Hardly 20-30 lines extra, and you will be having a database with you. Okay, the thing that Android Studio provides is if you click on this tab called App Inspection, you can actually look into your database, like what data it contains. So it has loaded data. So this is about all the data that we have saved till now. So if you click on this to do, you can actually see all the data that we have saved. Like we have now, look, these IDs are created automatically by room. So we are not creating these IDs. Room is automatically assigning unique IDs to every row. So we have this row 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have this data called hello world, bike, goats, wake up in the morning, apple banana. And actually, if we turn on the live updates and we type something here, let's say, let me type my name. With Shukla. And if I click on the save button, you can see this new entry added in the database. We have a new item called Arpit Shukla that has been added in the database. And one cool stuff is that you can also change your database from here. So like, for example, if you want to edit it, let's say Arpit Shukla is my name. I enter it. You can see the UI is also updated. So Arpit Shukla is updated in the UI as well, because we are observing any changes to a database and then updating our UI accordingly. So this is actually a pretty nice way to debug your database. So what went wrong, or if you want to try something like hello world, I am Arpit. And the moment I press enter here, like it immediately reflects in the UI. So hello world, I'm Arpit. So it's actually a pretty powerful step. So you can use this app inspection and this database inspector here to take a look into your database. So what all you have saved. Like one more powerful feature here is that you can also write custom queries. So you can write SQL queries here, like the one that we wrote here. If I show you the DAO, you can see this icon here. So this actually represents the query. So you can click on it and it will run this query. This was the output for that query. So it just ran the query that we had, select star from to do. So this is the query and this is the output of it. So you can use SQL syntax and write all this. For example, if you want only the first two items, you can write limit 2 and then run it. Then it will return a data which contains only two items, the first two items. So run it again, it will show all the items. And also sort it. Not sort, you write order by. So right now it is like, hello world, I am Arpit, buy clothes, wake up in the morning, apple, banana. If I order it by data, it will be sorted in the ascending order. So apple, banana, buy clothes, hello world. So you can use SQL queries here and get whatever data you want. You can filter data, you can limit the number of outputs. So pretty lot of stuff that you can do here. Major, then I've already started with app compatibility in my main application. How to include room then? Like I also have this room activity, like main activity. So this main activity I have in my code, and to include room, we just need to add these dependencies here. So add the dependency, add this plugin, and you have all the library included in your project. So if you must be showing some data in the UI. In case you are not, no problem. But if you are, just mark it with the entity, annotate one field with primary key. So it expects at least one primary key in your code. So just choose anyone which will be unique. So if you do not have anything unique, just create something like this and let room generate the value for that key by itself. And then just you need to write the functions that you need to perform operations. So maybe let's say you want to delete some to do. So how will you do it is you can create a function called delete to do, pass in a to do, and write a notation called delete. So using this, whenever you call this function and pass a to do, that to do will get deleted whenever you call this function. And similarly, you have an annotation called update. So this will update any to do with the primary key same as this one. So let's say if we pass a to do with id 1, it will update the to do with id 1 to this new value. And then for querying data, you have this query notation where you need to pass an SQL query for the data that we want to fetch from the database. Okay. Okay, so with this, I think we can conclude the first part of the session, which was about saving data in our local database. Now the second part, which was about doing some background work even when the app is closed. So that part Arjun will cover, and maybe we can take a 5-minute break. Arjun, what do you say? Do you want to continue right now, or should we take a 5-minute break? No, you are not audible actually. Is anyone else able to hear Arjun? Are you not audible? Maybe you can. Okay, but then how will take the session? You're not audible. Arjun, maybe you can try changing your internet connection. If you are able to resolve the problem, like, okay, we will take a 5 minutes break, and after that, hopefully Arjun will have resolved the problem. So you guys can also take a 5 minute break and get some food maybe, and then we'll continue the session, the second part of the session.
Okay. Am I audible right now?
Oh yes, you are. Great.
Okay. Fine.
By the time is someone else has any doubt, you can post in the chat. We are here. And right now it's 7:43, so maybe we'll resume at 7:48 maybe. Arjun, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, you can remove that access. Okay, just a second. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So before moving on to the next session, next part of the session, so I want to know how many of you are aware about any background work that we have to do? What is a background work? Anybody who has a like slice of an idea about that? And if we don't, I have a good example for that, so we can proceed. Don't worry. Okay. So, about what is the background work? It is very much clear with the statement that the text, like the name of this work, any work that we don't want to run on the UI thread or on the thread that is actually responsible, or a process that is actually responsible to run the app normally. Okay? Any task that we want to do, but do not want the user to get interrupted by it, or the user to get stuck upon. For example, there's this popular app which everyone will be using, it is called Instagram. And if you upload a particular picture or anything over it, so you might see that once you click your upload button, you are directly sent back to the home page, and there's an upload going on up above in the notification bar, that is navigation draw that you see up above. So you see that the upload is not yet happened, but still you are sent back to homepage without any confirmation that it is done or not. Like, you know that you just have clicked the upload yet, so it will not get directly uploaded in a second. It will take some time. Like, it will upload it to its server. Some images will get uploaded there, and then it will get shared across the feed that you have right now. So this all takes time, but we don't want user to get interrupted by this. So what they do, they shift over this task to the background process as a background process, and then move the user back to the app that they use. So you are directed to home page, and the task is going on in background. So this is a specific example where work or background task is useful for any application. So there are enormous amount of example for that. And as there is a need for a background task, there are libraries for helping us with that thing. So there are this background task, so you just assume that there is a thing that your app can do without letting you know that it is doing it. Okay, it is doing it in a hidden format. You don't need to, user is not aware of that. So Android imposed some restrictions that even if that user, if your app is doing your task in the background, so it must follow these and these instructions. Like, it should not overeat the data that a user have. It should not exhaust all the battery consumption, all the battery power that the device has. So these things are called restrictions, and this is what this is applied and modified over years. And for every Android version, there are more than for example, if I go with the official documentation, so you can see for any device that is above API 23, there is this very called job scheduler for that. For API levels 14 to 22, like we already discussed, that API levels are mapped to Android versions that we use. For example, Android 12, Android 11, Android 10, these all things. So API 12, 14 to 12, if that device is Google Play accessible, so it has GCM Network Manager. If it doesn't, then it has Alarm Manager or Broadcast Receiver type of thing. So there are many kind of libraries where, because of which you are able to handle these tasks. It is fine, but when you are creating an application, you don't want to go with specifications. If you are creating an application, you want to focus on working, making your task go background. You don't need to focus so much upon I should use which library for which version. That will just bloat up your code. So that's why Android Jetpack Compose, not Compose, Android Jetpack has come with this library called WorkManager, where you just you are just responsible for creating a work request to this, and that work manager is responsible to execute it whenever it is possible for them based on the constraints that you have set. For example, if you set a constraint that you need active data connection over the device, and then only this request can be sent. For example, just take the example of previous Instagram upload theory. So if you want to upload a particular image, you should be like given this constraint that there must be a data connection for the device. So you send this request to a work manager that I want to upload a picture, but the constraint is I should have the data turned on. So whenever the data is turned on, that work request will be executed by work manager, and the task will be done without the like knowledge of user. So in this way, we have taken this task to background. It is being done in the perfect environment that we want, and we are not also like focusing upon which type of background library are we using. Like if this is on API so and so, we are using job scheduler. If we are API so and so, we are using some alarm broadcast manager, something like that. So that's why what we are going to learn right now, and it is also taught in the sixth unit of Android Kotlin course. Like it is called Work Manager. So now, not making any more delay, I can start with the application normally. Just a second, this is the previous application I was working upon. As usual, I'll start with a new project. Name it. We'll be making an alarm. Like this is a basic example where you want, for example, whenever you set an alarm, you don't need to like open that alarm application every time you want, like you are turning on your like you don't even bother to open it once you set that alarm. So what happens is alarm has been set, and it is there is a process that is working in background, that whenever that time counter hits the time that you actually like demanded for example, I demanded for the alarm to be set up on 7 p.m. So I'm currently on 6 p.m. right now. We just set it, and then we just went off with the normal applications, and we removed that application, exited out the alarm application. And now this task is being set into the memory, that into the Android system, that when the clock hits 7, you need to do some particular task that this alarm application will say. So this is something which is a background application, and the user doesn't need to know that there's a process going on like this. It just needs to be aware of the like the output that we have to put. For example, normal and alarm applications will be using notifications and music to like make aware the user that there's something you have set a reminder for something. So we'll here we'll be just using a notification for simpler purpose, and like we'll go ahead with that. And if anybody has, like, you can surely develop like make it more accessible for yourself, like go on with some specific music that you want to have, and some other features if you want to include. That's totally upon you. So I have just created a new project here, and we'll be waiting for the Gradle build to complete. And anybody who has any doubt, you can post it directly. Also, just confirm me, like, is this studio screen is visible for everyone, like the font size and the color brightness, everything? Okay, thanks. Hmm. Usually, like normally, the first step of for me would be to add the particular library, because Work Manager is not something that is present in a project by default. So we will have to import that library into our project, and for that, we'll be just adding that import statement into the Gradle file. Um, I have copied it here for my convenience. You can directly search it on over Google, or Arpit can help you to post our document where you can look upon. Arpit, can you post that same? Fine. So after clicking on after posting the dependency, I have just clicked on sync now. So this is a dependency for Work Manager. Fine. So now my app is having that Work Manager libraries, and So there's this thing called worker, work request, work manager. There are these few terms that you need to like first know about. Work manager, you can like take this example of a work manager as a person who is responsible to execute anything. A work request is a list of like a set of instructions that a work manager should follow, and a worker is someone. Okay, let's modify the example first. A worker is something that is that a worker is a person that needs to follow set of instructions. A work request is a request which contains the instructions that the worker will follow, and work manager is the one which manages all these processes. Okay, so first of all, before making a request, we must make a person who needs to like follow these requests. So we'll name that person as alarm worker, and it will extend from a special class known as worker. See the Android X.work import. Now it will show some errors due to constructor invocation and some other parameters that it need. Okay, so we have added the parameters. Now the other thing that it needs is to implement the in member functions that a worker must implement. So there's this particular function. If you see, it is called do work. Any worker must have this function known as do work. A do work function is a place where like whenever a worker is invoked, they are they are set to execute this do work function. What does it mean? That it is very evident from the name only that do the specific work that you are made for. So in this particular block, I will write all that kind of work that I want to do, and in the end, I will return that my task was successful or not. Okay. So let's first do this. I need to tell you that I will be taking an input about the type of title and description that I want to display in my notification over the alarm. Like any notification comes up, so I want to take that as a input from the user. So I'll be um, this is an input data field that is being there by like, their default. So I will just like if you remember that we got something like this from intents, like when we transferred our data field from one activity to other activity, we use this similar kind of thing on an intent, like dot get extra, yeah, put extra. We did these things. So we just have to pass the name by which we have passed this value here, and description, and we taking that from input data too. Okay. Now, what I'll do, I'll make a function known as show notification, and I'll pass title and description of the notification that I want to display. And when this is done, I'll return my result was successful. Okay. So we know that whenever you want to send a notification, it like almost returns in a successful format. So we don't need to check that the notification was there or not, because it will be there. It will be there. If we follow the rules, it will be there. Now we need to make a show notification function. See, it is automatically generated for us. What it takes is two string fields, which can be nullable too. So that's not our issue. Now there are few things that you need to know about like sending a notification. So I'll first just paste the code here, and will let you guide you through all the things that is present for notification. So this is a lot. Bear with me. Now, whenever we want to send a notification, so we need to first register that there's a channel like when you pull up if you can see the navigation drawer like here, this notification drawer that you see, this particular notification is by Android system. Okay, you can see this particular notification by Android system, this particular notification by Android system. And if I am able to open any other application, probably not. I don't think so anybody else will have a notification, but still, uh, any like this is a notification, this is a notification drawer, and this is a notification, and it is registered under a particular application, and that name is displayed above here. Okay, we can like
Maybe you
when
can
you
open the Chrome app. You can show the channels there, like the app info, like not the app but the app info,
have info. Okay.
like the this I button and the notifications.
Hmm?
So these are all the channels that we have. The downloads, incognito, media. These are all the different channels that we have in a Chrome
Oh,
app.
okay. Yeah. See, like whenever you there are different channels for the type of notification that a Chrome app can provide. An incognito mode notification that yeah, that's a better example. If we just open an incognito tab here, you can see that we are having a notification like just here, and it is a specific type of notification, and it is on a separate channel. So all these things needs to be registered before sending any kind of notification. So whenever the Chrome app runs, see it just updated that one notification per week because I just opened it right now. So what I was talking about is before showing a notification normally, we need to first register that we will be showing a notification in a channel like this. Okay, we'll have to first. hmm, So about creating a channel, and then we'll go about creating a notification. Also, there's just one thing that this creating of channel and specific to the particular application, this was all implemented after Android, the Oreo version. Okay, you can see that it is simple if else statement. If my build version, this the build version means the application is running on which device. If the device which this application is running on is having a is it is greater than Android Oreo, or it is Android Oreo, or it is greater than Android Oreo. So we need to create a specific channel, and only on this channel we are allowed to post any notification. So this is specific to Android Oreo, so don't worry about that. This if else is needed for that case only. And if we are not on Android Oreo, like if we are on devices that are lesser than Android Oreo, so we can directly post a notification. It doesn't require any notification channels to it has a different altogether process for that, so we don't need to worry about that. Now you can see that what I did here is, this is a string. Okay, we are just naming our channel with a specific ID, just specific ID to us. If you want to make a bit more specific, so that will help us. Okay, now this is specific to our alarm channel that we are going to use to post any kind of notification from our worker. Now we created a channel. How? We created a notification channel object. We passed this ID for our purpose. We gave it a normal name, alarm channel, and we gave it a importance of high. Whenever importance high means that it is showing- it is evident from its name that whether this notification is too important to be displayed over. Like for example, some applications have this feature of hiding all the notifications or all the unimportant notifications. So you can set up the kind of importance that you want to give to this notification, specific to creating a notification channel now. And then using a notification manager, we created this notification channel. That's it. This is the part. where you are just creating a channel for your application to show any notification. Now, this is the part where you are actually creating a notification. Okay, you can focus upon this better. So what we did is storing a notification as this variable notification compat that notification comp that just use that builder extension and then pass on the context and then the channel ID for which this notification for like where we are going to display this notification. We just use this ID for creating this channel. So we are going to use the same ID for this notification. Now the input that we took from the user about the title and the description for the notification that we want to display, we set the content title to be that title. We send the content text to be this description that we want to display. And we set the kind of icon that we want to display over this notification. For example, in this incognito tab, you see this little person with a hat with two eyes. This is a small icon that Chrome has designed for an incognito type notification. So we have defined that we will be using the app icon, IC launcher foreground. See, this is the app icon. Okay, like this is a Android Marsh, like Android guy, which like the Android bot where there's a. It is actually white, so you might be not able to see it. But like if you can imagine, normally you will be able to see it. No problem. This actually this white guy that you see here, it is that. So we are using that for our notification icon. Now we just build this notification, and here we have prepared the kind of information that we want to send along with our notification, and with the help of notification manager we notify that we want to display this notification here. This is all about sending a notification from a work manager. For a worker perspective, you just see that when a worker class is called, it will just take up the title and description from the input data that it was sent, and then it will just pass on this to a show notification function, and then this function is responsible for creating a notification. So you can make worker do any kind of task that you want to, but you can just see that it is like a person who has been designed to do a specific task. Okay, now about creating a request to ask this person to do the task. We have created a person now and we want to request him now. So for making a request, we'll just go ahead with normal application. 1 second. And first we want to, as we are getting that input data in the worker, so we need to prepare input data for the worker too. So input data is equals to I am using the Android X.work import. Okay, let's check for that. Data dot builder. I want to put few data points. I want to put a string. I will pass the key value to be title, and L for now I'll just pass hello. Okay. And I want, as we were also getting another data point, it was description, DESC. So I will pass on to that too. Now, build. Fine. So we have prepared the kind of input data that we want to give. Now we can, for now, I am going to delay this notification by 1 second, 1 minute actually, to like prove that this particular task was working in background and we have nothing to do while like our application is not running. So I will taking this time interval as 1 right now. And now is the time for making a work request. So work request. Yeah. So one more thing, work request can be of two types for for your reference. Like there's one work request of one time work request and one is of periodic work request. So as vague as the name, like as simple as the name, one time work requests are the ones that works only once, and periodic ones can be designed to work periodically in a certain time period. This time period can be days, this time period can be minutes, this time period can be hours, anything you want. There's a minimum limitation of about 15 minutes, like at least 15 minutes a difference should be there before any period execute again. But still, it is very helpful in case, for example, if you might have seen the persons who are waking up late night, that WhatsApp backs up all its data at 2 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so this is a kind of periodic work that it does normally every day. So if we want to design our app in which we want to have the same feature of backing up everything at 2 a.m., we can set up a periodic work request which will hit its work at exact 2 a.m. for any device, and then after it's doing its work, we can just let that request die and start. It will automatically start in the next day. So this is a basic example of having a periodic work request. But in our case, we just want to get an alarm notification only once, not more than once. You can obviously design it for more than once, but here we want to just go with the one-time work request. So just as that one-time work request builder, I'll pass the type of worker I'm building the request for. I have designed an alarm worker here, so I'll be building a request for alarm worker. And now on this alarm worker, I'll have to first set the input data. Okay, I have prepared the input data for it, so I will pass on to that and set initial delay. Yeah. Now I want to set the delay after which I will be executing this work request. Okay. So as I have defined the time interval above, I'll use that and define that my time is in minutes. Okay. So it will take exactly 1 minute to execute this work request. Now I'll build this request here. Now we have prepared the worker, we have prepared the work request, and now we need a manager to handle all these things. So we'll call work manager or get instance. That's something we do normally. And with the help of instance of work manager, we will enqueue our work request. As simple as that. Like just a grammatical language. With the help of a work manager instance, we will enqueue. Enqueue means we will like enqueues one at you can see the definition to enqueues one item for background processing. Like it just says that I am queuing this particular task to be done. Enqueuing. So we are queuing this particular work request to be done. And what this work request wants, this work request wants alarm worker to start working with the time of with the kind of data that I have provided in the input data and the initial delay that it should wait before start working. Okay. So we'll just run button and we'll wait. Anybody who has any doubt, they can ask normally in the chat. So our application started working. So like as of now, we haven't created any UI. You can note the time right now, 8:18. So as of now, we haven't created any UI. So we are seeing this blank hello world screen that we get in a normal default application. But what has happened already that in the on create function, this particular data was created and the work request was enqueued normally. So after a minute, will probably have a notification for us. And just to prove that we are not interacting with the UI or any app, so I'll just remove it from the recent application. Okay, I have removed everything from the recent application. So it means that usually a user is not aware that there is any kind of background process that might run after a particular period. So for now, if I'm a normal user, I don't know that there is anything going behind in the application. So I can just like normally wait for a minute to pass. You can see we just notification and the data that it is displaying is the same that we designed it for. Okay, so it has this if you can see it closely, the place where I am pointing right now is the normal Android figurine application like icon which I was talking about. And now the title of this notification is hello, and the description of this application is wake up, like as we have designed it for. So like you see, after just a minute, this work request was executed. We were not able to know that there's anything going behind, and still a work request was executed. We don't know the library that this work request was using, but for our purpose, we were just using a work manager, and it was as simple as that, like creating a person that will do the work, creating a request for that person, and passing on the data that we want it to execute, and then asking work manager to execute this work request. That's it. That's our job. And now if you want to like extend this particular thing, you can you will probably use a UI palette here. Like I was taking these things like hard coding these things normally. Okay, so I can also take these things here from the user about the title, description, and what is it, any delay time that you like you want to have. Okay, number. Fine. um let's design it. This is normal constraint layout thing that we are doing right now. So if anybody is not aware of what I am doing, they can probably look up to the previous lectures that we have worked. Oh, sorry. Okay, fine. Let's just not focus upon the UI right now. We just want to now um, I want this input type to be normal text. Like this is the normal pattern we follow, like define the kind of input that this edit text will take. So now I will rename it to title normal as that. I haven't enabled data view binding here, so I'll have to use those like those silly find view by IDs for our purpose. But let's just call it like this. Decided. Okay. So that I can decide. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So just for the sake of visibility, I'll hint this with title. I want to enter title here. I want to enter description and delay that I want this application to follow. Now in the main activity, I can take these data points. Oh yeah, there will be a need of button too, because we need like click upon a button to start executing anything. What about a fab? We can use a fab. Hmm, let's use a star for now. Now using a star might seem a bit odd, but don't worry. Hmm. Now a margin of 8 dp maybe. Okay. Now we are ready with the UI, and I will have to do this. Find view by ID. I am finding a floating action button which has an ID of r.id dot what was that button, yeah, and then on this button I'll set a on click listener. It's basic what we have learned till yet. Now I'll transfer all this logic inside this on click listener, and this title description, we'll have to take this from the edit text that we were using, that we are going to use. So find new by ID for these two text dot id dot that was title id dot description, that will be a description, and one more thing was delay, what I would say time interval. It was be edit text and it was named delay. I don't think anybody would have any issue with this thing. Like, it is very much basic. We have learned this in previous sessions. It was not. And we'll be time interval with me. Now, well, time interval is okay. Now, time I want to get the string that the text that was stored inside it. I'll convert it into string for my purpose, similar to this, and the text dot to string dot mm, to int, because we want it to be an integer. Now this is a time interval. We can remove it. What? Is it too long here normally? Yeah, too long. Okay. So you can see that we haven't used these variables yet. Title, description. So as simple as that, on the button click of that floating action button, we will take the input of about the title, description, and time interval that I want for this worker to follow. Then I will pass this title and description as an input to the worker. I will use this delay to like set the initial delay for this worker to once work only once. Okay, we are talking about a one time work request. So I can only run this. Hmm. So I have these three input box: title, description, and delay. I'll enter title. Why not to use this? Not study jam. And delay of like um, a minute, 1 minute will be fine. Don't want to wait too much. Clicked on star button. There's a request that is going on. We can be assured of that. But still, we are see. This is a classic example of what we actually wanted. A request going on in background, and yet we can interact with the UI. I know we won't be actually interacting with it, but still, like you can use this app or you can just exit this app out. You don't need to like worry about anything after you have already included that request. Now work manager ensures that by any method it is going to make this request work only if the constraint that you have set are met. There are other constraints that I would have done here too. I'll keep this app here. You can see it normally. There are a few more constraints that you can set. For example, um, see, we just got a notification at Android Study Jam. We are doing great after a 1 million delay. By the time I'm setting up the constraints, I can run it once again. It is called, yeah, alarm, not this one, this one. Hmm. Um, I'll give it a delay of 2 minutes now. You can note the time. We started a bit after 8:31, so it will be a bit after 8:33 then. We can normally exit the app. I was telling that you can set some other constraint too. For example, um, constraints, and these constraints are like they can be built normally. Constraints dot the way we build that input data, we build these constraints in the same similar format. Set, see, you can see here that set requires network type, set requires battery not low, set requires charging, set requires device idle, set requires storage not low. Like so many options for the type of work request and the type of environment you want before a work request starts. So you can select that set it requires charging. I want this work request to be done like I want this work request to be started only when the device is getting charged. Okay, I set this constraint. And if my device is not getting charged, our work request will not work. Okay, we can improve it like an emulator is normally 100%. I don't know, maybe this is from another app, so don't get confused. We got our hello there. Maybe like I can try with that. I'm not sure that does an emulator is considered to be charged or getting charged. Okay. Yeah, we got our hello thank you app like notification that we were supposed to have after 8:33. So that's what we just got right now. Now so when charging delay of 1 minute cost 2 minutes were too much than that. We'll see like probably after a minute, like after 8:35, even like the notification till 8:36, it means that our device is working fine, our worker is working fine, and like probably an emulator is not considered to be on charge. I don't know. We'll find out. Okay, so like this was all about the work manager. We are able to do our task in background without actually able like actually interacting with the app. Even if we did do interact with the app, it won't affect the process. For example, this time, like even if I don't remove this from recent application, it won't affect the process. If we request, then again, then this is difficult for the app to. Yeah. If we request again, yeah. So these are certain scenarios which you can design your worker for. For example, you can set this particular feature also. Like if I have requested the same thing again, so should I execute like remove the previous request and like should I replace the previous one with the new one, or should I add this particular new request in a queue? So these things can also be set like in the similar way that I have set constraints or set initial delay, something like that. See, like it is 8:35 norm already, and we haven't seen that notification. And it was like fine. It's 8:36, and we haven't seen that notification, so it is proving like we set the constraint that the emulator must be charging to show that notification, but the notification is not getting charged right now, so that notification was not shown to us. So that's how our background task was managed. And if we wanted that constraint to follow, if it doesn't follow, it won't like like start the worker and execute any of the tasks. Okay. I guess I'm done with this work manager. So anybody who like to ask, they can ask. And yeah, Arpit, if you want to like say anything about it, and you can like go ahead with the session now.
I think that was it for the work manager part. Like if anyone has any doubt, like they can ask regarding some special work. Because it's a very common thing in like, all the big apps. Like they do in background. Like some common examples are like backing up of your data to their own servers. They can be done in the background. Sending some image like a WhatsApp video you send. You click on send and then even if you close the app, that video will be sent. So that's again example of background work.
Okay. So we can meet for a minute, and then we'll like, probably wrap up this session.
Yeah.
Okay. And like all this code snippets and application will be present over GitHub, so don't worry about that. We'll just let you know about all these things, and the session recording will be posted on YouTube. so you can watch it for reference. And if you have any doubts, you can post it on Telegram too. Okay, then. Um, an odd question. While I was using calculator app in one of the previous sessions, I noticed one thing that we should do to number and it depends on this is actually what is happening. It is actually a crash that you are seeing right now. If you haven't verified that the input that you have taken from the user, it is null or not null, and like it is empty or not. So like if you are trying to operate anything over that, it's obviously going to crash. Arpit, while making that calculator app, have we verified that the input was, I think we have verified that input was not empty.
Maybe you can open the GitHub, or like maybe I can share my screen, like whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you can share the screen, it will be fine.
Okay. Okay. So is it visible?
It is.
So like if I go to the GitHub code, like what we had built there, it was in session 1, right?
I think so. It was in session 1. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what we written. No, it was not in session 1.
Oh, yeah, it was a part of
Yeah,
complex
homework.
layout, so it was in the session 2.
Let's see what code we written. So when we click on a button, we call this function called get result, and this is the line that causes the problem. So we are saying number
Yep.
one dot text dot to string, and now when we have an empty edit text, what happens that this string is empty, and when you try to convert an empty string to an integer, it gives a crash because it's a number format exception. If you like open the logcat and check the exception, it will say that it is a number format exception because this empty string cannot be converted to an integer. So I mean, like since we have time, maybe I can
Um,
go ahead and
yes,
open it.
even if we have used and late in it, that's not the actual issue that Arpit is talking about. We actually have in the function in the code, after clicking on any button, we are we are calling get result function. Okay, and in that function, we are trying to get the text that has been entered into any input box, one and all the two input boxes. Okay, and while getting this text, we are converting that string into an integer. So you can see the line 45 here, which Arpit is presenting. Val a is equals to number one. Number one is the edit text that we are referring to. Number one dot text dot to string. Till here, it is fine. Like if the input box has something, it will convert into a two. It will convert into a string, and if it doesn't, it will convert into an empty string. Fine. But the issue occurs when you are converting this empty string into a two int. Okay, so empty string does not correspond to any integer, so calling two int over it is our issue. We have not checked that is it empty or is it not null. This is our duty to check actually, but we have directly used dot two int because we knew that we won't be entering any we won't be anytime keeping it empty, so that's something we assume, and that's fine. Good. If you face this issue and you want to solve it, you can solve it by normally checking that before converting into integer it is not empty. That's one simplest answer for that. And Arpit, if you have any other answer, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the build to finish, and then maybe I can try it.
Hmm.
Okay, the app has built. Let's first run the app, and see how the crash happens. So it will take some time to build the app. And by the way, whenever any app crashes, like closes suddenly, that's like most of the times it's because the app has crashed. So if it happens, you need to like find the cause of that crash and you can find it in the logcat. So you have this tab here. I hope it's visible, called logcat, and it logs everything. So you can search for the crash here. So just let me run the app and show you how can you find it. Like right now it shows data for all the different apps that we have in our device. The first thing I would like to do is to filter it to show the data for only this particular app. And since it is not running right now, it doesn't show anything. Let's wait for the build to finish. By the way, if anyone else has to ask something, it's going to take a minute or two. Like any other bug that you found and you are wondering how that happened or how to fix it, you can ask right now. So I already had the app with me. Yeah, so we have the app with us. The previous build is still working. Like if you click a button right now, so if I click this plus button, the app will crash. It will close. That's what has happened right now. If you go to the logcat and if you scroll a little bit, you can see the cause of this crash. So it says for input string, and this is an empty string, we got a number format exception because this string cannot be converted to integer. And you can see these blue links here. They point to the line where the crash happened. What is this line? Dot to string dot to int. We're calling that to int function, but that was causing a crash. So we need to fix it. Now there are two ways. So if the like text field is empty, you can either ignore it, like not do anything. So for that you can do something like that. You can write an if condition saying that if this string dot is empty, or if the second number is empty, we need to return. We do not want to do anything if any of those is one way. Another way can be like you can assume that it's zero. So if user hasn't typed anything, so it was zero. So there's another function called toInt or null. So what does this function do is it an integer value if the string can be converted to an integer, and if it cannot be converted to an integer, it will return null. You can see the type of a here, it is int and a question mark. So it says that the type is null. With this you can use this else operator, say that if this value is null, I want to use this particular value. Similarly for the other one, you can say that I want to use 0 if any of this is null. So if this is null, use 0 for it. If this is null, use 0. Now the app won't crash, but then like since we have this condition, if b is equals to 0 and operator is equals to divide. So if we leave the two empty, like the second one empty, and we press the divide button, so it will give this error, but otherwise the app should work. Let's run it again. Whenever your app crashes, the first thing you should do is check the logcat for the error. What is the error and in which line that occurred? So it like the logcat is cleared when we restart the app. So let's build it again. Now if I click on the plus button, okay, I had not removed this if condition. Let me remove it. Now if I click on this plus button, it will give the result 0 plus 0 equals 0. And let's say I type 10 here, put a minus here. The first number will be taken as 0, and then 0 minus 10 will be minus 10. If we multiply, it will be 0 into 10 is equals 0. For divide, it will be 0 by 10 is equals 0. So you have two ways. You can either ignore it if it's empty, or you can use a 0 there, or minus 1, or whatever you like. So to do that, you can use this function to int or null. It will not throw an exception if it cannot be converted to an int. Rather, it will give a null value, and then you can convert that null to 0 using this Elvis operator. That's how you can fix that bug or the crash. What is relative layout? I found it somewhere, whereas a replacement for constant. So you have a lot of different layouts here.
I think we have discussed about this while we were working.
I'm not sure. So there are a lot of layouts here. Like one is a linear layout. So linear layout, inside a linear layout, you can put elements in either a horizontal way direction or in a vertical direction, so that they will either be stacked vertically or horizontally. And then the relative layout, the items that you put inside it, you can like provide a relative ordering, like whether this particular item should be above this item, below this item, like that. Constraint layout is another way of building UI. Here what we do is the views that we put here, we provide constraints to it. So like here we have top to top of, bottom to bottom of. Like efficiency wise, constraint layout is the best because it results in a flat hierarchy. So we do not have a lot of nesting here. But if you are using linear and relative layout, then it would have caused a lot of nesting here. So you would have views, and then inside them another views, then another views. So constraint layout is kind of the best of all, and it helps you make complicated layouts as well, because you can just set the constraints for the four corners, for the four sides, and you can constrain it that way. So yes, you will find relative layouts used somewhere, but I would say use constraint layout if possible. How do we solve errors regarding QEMU? So if you are getting some errors regarding the emulator, like the best thing that you can do is search on Stack Overflow for them. Just copy paste the error and then search it on Stack Overflow, and most of the times you will find answer to that error because someone would have already faced it and solved it. Okay, great. So by the way, how many of you are like thinking of building an app, like submitted the form? Okay, Yash has submitted. Gaurav as well. Okay. So have you guys like finalized your ideas, and or is there someone like who is still confused on what to make? And also for the team thing, like have you finalized, are you working alone or working the team? Or is someone like is confused like whether you should work alone or in a team? Any doubt on that sort? Finalizing alone, okay. So in case anyone of you has any doubt regarding any app idea, you can ask. Maybe we could suggest something or help you out. because today is 5, and for the AHJ submission the deadline is 10. So you have like around 5 days to build something. And I hope you all have read the guidelines that we shared. So you need to follow those guidelines for that app for the ASJ part. Because actually the responses that we have seen, like 90% of them haven't decided the project yet. So in case you have, that's great. In case you haven't, I would say decide it soon and start working on it. Now, since you have seen the work manager thing, I guess one app idea that I can think of is that you can make an app to save your friends' birthdays. So you can use a recycler there. You can add your friend's birthday, and then you can schedule a work request for that. So at that day, maybe at 12 a.m. in the night, the app will send you a notification saying that, hey, like, this friend's birthday is today. So this is one idea that you can use. Sounds cool to me, but I hope you guys will be able to implement it. You can also use room here. Can I still fill form? Yes, the deadline is tomorrow, like today's night. So you can get the form. Maybe Arjun can share the link if he has, or we already have sent that in the Telegram group. So everyone has joined the Telegram group, right? Okay, you have form. Okay, so yes, you can fill it by today night.
And like if anybody who wants to like get something, like you have to submit this application by like having a repository where you have coded all these things and committed that, and all these things are done before, like after 29 November and before 10 January. So if you need any help with that over GitHub part, we are there. You can ask anything about that. And also if you want to know, like still want to know like is your idea good enough, you can post your idea into group, or if you are not sure like you should post it or not, you can post it, like send us into a DMS so we can give you our review over that idea. And if you are not able to team up with anyone, you can directly just contact anyone who is there in the Telegram group. We have made a separate channel group for those who have filled the form, so you can find all those people who are willing to make an application. You can surely team up with anyone. You don't have to be like create any fancy application, so you just need to like give a proof that you learned so many things, so many concepts while like going all the Android studies and sessions. So like there are almost 6 units about in this course, and we covered all these six today. So like, go with internet, go with local database, with the background task, or live data, navigation, normal layouts, everything. So you can pick up any of those which are necessary for Android studies and guidelines. So like we have shared a written document about what are the guidelines for that. So you have to follow that. It was like mandatory for using few Android components that we have taught here. For example, room using room was mandatory. Using live data and view models was also, and I think so. A navigation library was also mandatory. So you have to use these. Like if you don't want to use it very heavily, you can just use it the way we have used here. Right, while making a to-do application, we just did a simple query about adding a to-do and deleting a to-do, but that use the complete power of an room library. For example, using DAO, using room database, creating an entity, doing any update over it. So like you just have to be sure that you are able to use that feature, and like prove that you are able to use that feature. Don't have to be very fancy about it. Like for example, you don't need to be a person who is designing WhatsApp's local database, because it is too concept too like too complex to handle. You can just go with the one we created in our database. If you see it from a broader spectrum, like it was just an ID and a string, as simple as that. Like if we would call in a simpler term, it would be a map of intent string, but we are actually using room for that. We're using the database for that, so we are aware of the process. the similar way you can use these components, make it easy for yourself, but still make it a reasonable application.
This was the document shared with you guys. So like these are the points mentioned that you need to implement at least 3 Android Kotlin concepts, at least 3 concepts that you learned. Use Android Studio. Like the design should be good, simple, intuitive, interactive, and you need to have at least 2 to 3 screens. And you should be navigating between them in the navigation library. So in the session 2, we had talked about this navigation library. So you can create fragments. Like you need at least 2 of them. So like
Mm.
if you don't want to create more, just create at exact 2 of them, and then you can navigate between them using the navigation library. And then live data and view model we have used like in 2 or 3 apps in the session in the series.
Mm.
And today we talked about the room database. So you have to use these concepts at least one in your app, throughout your app. So like you
You
can.
can, whenever you are going to use view model, you will obviously require lab data with it. So these both goes hand in hand. And like you saw the application of room database today here. So if you are using a database, so like we just saw that we included both view model and live data along with it. So I would prefer app that is dependent on database a bit, so that you will be able to use all these things. Make a two screen map, as Alfred said, like just navigate from one screen to another, so that will be satisfying the constraint that they have given, and also it won't make anything complex for you too. And using navigation library for that is very much helpful for you also. You don't need to worry about what is that, and what do you need to actually navigate between screens. For example, if you remember that phone contact manager application that we made, where we used to go to next screen and then add contacts, and then click on back press button to see all these contacts listed out in the home page. So that's something you can develop upon. Also, there's one information about optional use of like using internet. So the thing that we learned in the previous session to this was all about internet. So if you want, you can. If you don't want, so you can probably avoid using internet. And I think you, very few case will be there where you will need both internet and local database. And even if you are like confident enough, so go ahead, I will support you surely. And also, you can just directly create, like you don't worry about documenting your application. You can just ask us after your complete code, if you have written your complete code application, that we have like come to us with like this, and present us your GitHub repository or your application, and say that we have created this, and we'll help you to document all these in like the way that they have asked us to. For example, they have asked to create a one pager application, one pager app, like one pager view of your complete application, the idea, the screenshots, and an APK as a code base. If you have not like, probably like this would be not be possible for you to upload it to Play Store, so you can just directly create a zip file of all the code base. For like, you can create an APK, a zip file, and then just link on the GitHub link that you have worked upon. So like all these things will be fine. But don't worry, if you forget about it, we can you can ask us anytime about it. But start with anything if you have anything in mind.
And also since like 10 is the deadline also, so like don't wait for like 11:59 at 10, because we won't be
Hmm.
able to like send your app. I would
Yeah,
suggest like finish it by 9 and send it to us, so that we can process all the submissions and then send the apps
yeah, like you mentioned,
approval.
and it will be fine for us. We need to compare all these applications which you are going to make. So there are fellow participants and attendees who are working on hard on applications. So we have to select the best of them. We need time for that. So feel free to ask anything, and we can call this a session then.
Yeah, I think if anyone else has any question, they can ask. Or also there was one information like all of you who will submit an app, like we will provide a certificate for that, the ASJ
Hmm.
completion certificate. So you'll have the certificate if you like submit an app, any app, like not an empty app, definitely not a Hello World app, but anything you make, you can receive a certificate for that.
Hmm. Yeah, like a certificate signed under your name by our GDSC and that Android Study Jam. So you can like post it over in LinkedIn and all, and like tag anything you want. So that will be helpful. Okay then.
I guess there are no more doubts right now.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining, and hope to see your submissions soon. With this we are completing our Android Study Jam session for in IIT BHU, and hope we come next year with some new concepts too. Okay then.
Great,
Bye.
guys. Bye.